Sorry about that. We were muted again. Welcome to the Right Wing podcast. This is episode 17, and we got a real superstar going to be coming on tonight. I'm super excited. I'm your host, Jarrod Wright, and this is exciting. I mean, we all been waiting on this one, so I'm super excited to bring it in. Let's just pull it over right now. Right, he should be coming on any second now. Let's see what's going on. We got a technical issue. Clyde, can you hear us?
Hey, can you hear me?
All right, here we are.
Hey, sorry, trying to get it up on my Instagram.
Oh, you're good. You're all good, brother. We should have guys on Instagram. Can y'all see both of us? Everything working good? It said should be streaming for you, Clyde, for what I'm showing.
Yeah, I gotta resend the code.
Okay.
If anybody's asking questions, I can answer them while I'm doing this, though.
Okay. Sweet. All right. Clyde's getting it fixed back up. But yeah, we're on episode 17. Obviously, Clyde's our second guest on the show. We're super excited to have him on here. Super excited for all the new people tuning in, watching, coming from Clyde's Instagram or from mine. If you haven't saw it, it's all y'all on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're at. X, I guess it is. Super excited to have y'all. And yeah, me and Clyde, we got a full slate put out. Different things to talk about. We kind of ran through it early. We may do a little Q&A at the end, depending on kind of how much time we spend on everything. Where if this is one, who knows? It might go for a while. You good to go, Clyde?
Putting the code in right now.
Okay.
I apologize.
Oh, no problem. Everybody, bear with us. We're both somewhat new at this new streaming service, trying to get it
I
figured
think
out.
that should be good to go. I think let me see if I'm streaming on.
Okay. On my end, it's telling me it is streaming from at least Restream is saying it's going to your Instagram. Let me see if it pulls up.
So the issue is it's streaming on my a different account. It needs to go to the Real Clyde account.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's going to a different one. I got you.
How many people do we have in here right now?
Let's see. Let's see. We got 10 coming from YouTube, Rumble, Facebook. Looks like we got 20 something over on the Instagram so far on my end. I'm sure more people will stumble in as we go. Again, everybody, sorry about the technical difficulty side of things as we slowly get it figured out.
Let me see.
But yeah, quick overview on everything. Kind of been going on this week. Obviously, we had the government shutdown. I had an episode Sunday night, if y'all missed it, talking about the government shutdown and kind of the implications for people. A lot of people are going without pay. Yet, the government's still spending money, sending money to other nations, to foreign entities, and such. And a lot of people are upset about it. I have several friends that are in the service, and they're not getting paid. They're having to go through everything, whether they're active duty, whether they're reserves, and they're having to still do everything, but yet not get paid. And of all the people, you would think that the military men and women would be the ones to get paid, and not the congressmen and women. But that's just the reality we live in right now until the shutdown's fixed, until we get a vote on the spending bill to push us through and get us back up and running, I guess. Outside of that, I mean, outside of the people who aren't getting paid, I really don't care that much whether or not the government stays shut down or not if the people are getting paid. But we haven't had much leeway there as far as I know. Let's see. Clyde, you working now?
Um, it says it's still live on my other account. Is
Hmm.
it possible to close this and reopen it?
Yeah, you can. Here, let me unpair it, and well, it's not letting me unpair it. I think it's off now. Okay, maybe it will let you do it now. I think I took it off to where you can try to repair again. Um, Sweet. I'm gonna switch back to right here while Clyde's doing that. Yeah, guys everywhere though. Let's break it open while Clyde's getting his Instagram stream figured out. Let's open it up for a little bit of Q&A, a little bit back and forth. So whatever comments y'all may have for either one of us. For guys on my end, I can relay something to Clyde if y'all have any questions for him. I'm sure he'd be interested to see kind of what y'all might be asking, what y'all might be talking about, what y'all might be interested in. Let's pull it up here on the chat. All right, we got all kinds of people in here on this chat. Let's go. Hey, man, working out the kinks is part of it, man. We got a new streaming service I'm attempting to use here. This is my second episode with it, and I'm really happy with it. It's just a little different and takes some getting used to. But with it, the capabilities have really expanded. I'm able to push us out to several platforms at one time. I think we're streaming to 5 separate platforms right now, plus hopefully Clyde's Instagram if we get it back up and working, to where we have a lot of options for a lot of viewers to be able to come in. Whatever your preferred source of viewing is. Like I said, Facebook, X, Twitter and X, the same thing. Instagram, Rumble, and YouTube. So it's going to several places right now. It looks like we have quite a few on YouTube. Actually, we've had some on Rumble, some on Facebook, and as always, quite a few on Instagram. And we got a comment. Just saw my reel about Israel killing Charlie Kirk. Yeah, I mean that whole situation. A lot of y'all probably saw several of the episodes I put out about Israel, in my opinion, killing Charlie Kirk. And I mean that's my belief. That's all I can say on it. That is definitely my belief. And I feel like there's not really much of a debate there on whether or not he killed Charlie or whether or not they killed Charlie. It seems to be the consensus among a lot of people. I think at a bare minimum, we had to look at that situation and say, I don't think that a 30-06 hit him in the front of the neck. Clyde posted a great video talking about how they search for wounds in the military, Clyde being a Marine, and how hard it is to find an entry wound. And that was very interesting to me because this obviously was a wound. You could see it, blood spewing out of it if you watch the uncensored videos, especially the day of and stuff before they started kind of covering some stuff up. And it's hard for me to believe that he got shot by 30-06 in the front of the neck. If y'all saw my video talking about the difference in rifles, whether that be an AR style rifle or it be a hunting rifle like a 30-06, I just don't see a hunting rifle like the 30-06, they say it was, not doing more damage, personally. And maybe I'm wrong. I hope I am. Honestly, I hope the narrative is true, but I just can't see it being true. Um, and I
Hey, I'm
think
good to
there
go,
was
man.
a. Oh, you're good to go.
Yeah.
All right, sweet, sweet,
Yeah, we're
sweet.
getting some. Looks like we're getting some more numbers in here, but I'm live on Instagram.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, we got several people commenting here. We'll get around to some questions after a while. I appreciate all y'all that are hanging out in here. We got several coming in. But yeah, we got Clyde on. Super excited, Clyde. Super glad to have you here. I know we've been talking a lot, trying to get this rescheduled out. I had my family emergency last week, and Clyde's been great to work with. He's been easy to work with, easy to figure this out and get it rescheduled. He's been great with that. But I kind of want to dive in first, Clyde. Just for those of you who don't know who Clyde is, I would like for Clyde just to kind of talk about him. I mean, Clyde's a Marine. He spent time overseas. He's got some really cool stories. So, Clyde, if you don't mind telling us kind of like your backstory, man. I mean, how was your time overseas as a Marine and such when it comes to that stuff?
Yeah, I was in the Marine Corps for 5 years, from 2019 to 2024. I served as a Marine security guard, which basically I went to school to be a part of a Marine detachment that was in charge of doing the security at embassies overseas, US embassies. So I did that for 2.5 years. I was at the embassy in Tokyo, Japan for a year, and then I was at the embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia for 14 months. After I wrapped up my embassy duty, I came back to the States and got orders to a infantry unit 3-1 in Camp Pendleton, California. I was a 0311 infantry rifleman, and served there for 2.5 years. Did some training in California and then did a deployment to Darwin, Australia. I was in various parts of Australia doing training exercises, joint training exercises with the Aussies, the Brits, our army, the Japanese, the Gurkhas, the French, a few other nations were there doing training with us. But yeah, I was in for 5 years. I joined not right out of high school. I joined when I was 20. Um, and so did that, was honestly the best 5 years of my life. Never saw combat. A lot of people always comment like, "Oh, this guy was overseas killing people. Now he feels bad. He wants to talk about Palestine." But no, I never saw combat. Never, never killed anybody. Never did anything like that. But it was a great time. I got to experience a lot, especially coming from a small town. I grew up in uh, a suburb of Des Moines, Iowa, which is it's a tiny little bubble, very secluded from the rest of the world. So my time in the military gave me the opportunity to see the world and be exposed to different cultures and different societies and different ways of life. That was when I first got exposed to Islam in a Muslim country when I lived in Saudi Arabia and kind of understood the people and the culture and the religion more. And coming from like, you know, rural parts of America, you look at Muslims or Middle Eastern people as if, they were painted with a brush after 9/11 that was not so kind to those people. And lo and behold, in hindsight, looking back, they weren't even responsible for that. But yeah, so I got to see the raw, real Middle East. I've been to 7 countries now in the Middle East, so pretty familiar with that region of the world.
Wow, so that's pretty neat. I mean, the travel side of it, and it's. I mean, honestly, I'd say you probably consider it a blessing to have not been in combat specifically. 'Cause I think that's when it comes to military people. They there's some extent where you are prepared for it, but I don't think anybody is necessarily excited for it. Sometimes, at least not once you actually get there. Maybe some people are. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, obviously, I'm not a veteran. I didn't serve. So I don't know that side. But what motivated you to serve? Was there like a reason behind it? An intense, patriotic pride? I mean, what was it that kind of pushed you into service?
Yeah, pretty much just that. It was like a pride in being an American. It was about patriotism and all the cliche reasons why somebody joins the military. It was also just something I always looked up to when I was a kid. Like I always looked up to people who were in the military. I looked up to guys who were in special forces like Navy SEALs and Green Berets and Rangers and MARSOC and Recon Marines and all those guys. And I wanted to be a GI Joe when I grew up. So it was just something that was ingrained in me since I was a little kid and um, decided to do it. But yeah, I never got to see combat, but I had a great time. I had good training, good experiences. I met like the best friends of my life when I was in. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It
Hmm.
sucked a lot of the times. Like it really sucked a lot of times, but I wouldn't trade those experiences for anything. I think experiences are like it's a form of wealth that you can have. There's a lot of different ways that you can accumulate and acquire wealth, but I think experiences is one of the best ways to acquire wealth, and you'll experience things in the military, especially the Marine Corps, especially the infantry, that you can't. No amount of money can buy
Hmm.
those experiences and those relationships. And also, it gave me like depth into what I'm doing right now. It gave me a better understanding of what I'm doing right now. I worked with the State Department for 2.5 years. I worked overseas along with the State Department, and I saw a multitude of agencies, three-letter agencies that work in and out of the embassies, and I got to work with them. I got to be exposed to them and their way of life and how they operate, and it gave me, a lot of people in this little world, they look at like the government as if it's the boogeyman, and in a lot of ways it is, but there's a lot of good. solid people that work for the government and actually work for these three-letter agencies that are not like corrupt. They're not out here committing conspiracy theory or committing some crazy conspiracy. They're just also patriotic Americans that want to serve their country. And you have good people in the CIA, you have good people in the FBI, you have good people in the State Department, plenty of them. I've met them, worked with them. So
Mhm.
it's not all bad. And it gave me more of like a depth into that world and an understanding, and I can use that with what I'm doing now and not just say that like, there's this thing where like people will be going down this rabbit hole and they'll be researching this guy and they'll be like, oh, this guy's dad worked for the CIA back in the 60s or something, and then obviously that makes the guy like compromise or something, but that's not the case. There are a lot of people that work within the agency that are not evil, that are not compromised, that
Mhm.
are just genuinely trying to do good patriotic work for the country. So you have to look at context, and there's nuance to all of this stuff. So having that background and working with those people gave me insight into that world, and I could kind of correlate that to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, no, I think I think that's a great point. I mean, myself included. I think a lot of people tend to generalize groups of people, whether that's by a three-letter agency, or that's by a race, or it's by a religion, or whatever it may be. And ultimately, like you said, at the top, yeah, we probably see a lot of corruption, a lot of the conspiracy theories, like you talked about, and but like specifically like the CIA. I tend to throw it around to a lot of people like, oh, the CIA, Mossad, hand in hand, and all this stuff, and the corruption that ensues. And I think it's interesting because there are a ton of federal employees who are not involved in those things. They're showing up to work every single day like a normal person, just like I would, or you might, or whatever it may be. They're just trying to do better. They're just trying to serve the people around them, and that's forgotten. I can see them probably getting offended by a lot of the things that people say, and it's sad. It's sad that there's a certain stigma that comes with those agencies and such, and the corruption from the government, because I think you're probably similar in a lot of ways, and kind of questioning a lot of what the government says, does, when it comes to these things. And sadly, it's because they've the higher ups, what I'm speaking of, have kind of betrayed our trust in a lot of ways, from
Yeah.
that side. And what's sad is I think that the common distrust for the higher ups will always be there, but the sad one is the common distrust for the common man who works for the government, and whatever agency. Like I have friends that work for like Homeland Security and such, and like I don't think he's in some grand conspiracy theory, making sure such and such at
Yeah.
whatever. And it's sad that they kind of get roped in with all of that, of course. And it is interesting you bring that perspective, because that's something I haven't done, is work closely with any of these three-letter agencies or anything with the government in general, other than like getting my driver's license and paying my taxes each year. Um, so it's interesting to hear that side of it. Now, growing up, I'm kind of curious about. You said you grew up in Iowa. Were you yeah, I think you said in a rural town. Was it kind of like country town? How did you grow up? I mean, religiously, I know you're an Orthodox now. I think you said you were a Protestant before. I think a lot of your family is still Protestant. I'm kind of curious that background, and kind of what stimulated your shift into the Orthodox Church.
Yeah, I mean, I was all like, it's a mixture. Even if you live in Des Moines, it's a mix of like country life and city life. Like I was like just farmland and country bumpkin hillbillies kind of. Even if you live in the big city of Des Moines, the capital there, you're still like connected to the country. So yeah, it was very right wing, very conservative, very Republican, very MAGA when Trump came around, all of that stuff. Very Zionist Christian. Also, I didn't even know Orthodoxy. I'm Orthodox now, but I didn't even know Orthodoxy existed growing up in Iowa. If I went back home, I couldn't point out an Orthodox church for you. I've never seen one there. Um, so and Iowa's like a bubble, man. And I talk about this like America's a bubble too. Iowa is a bubble within a bubble. America's already a big bubble because we're not exposed to the rest of the world. We're not exposed to the East. Um, Most Americans don't travel outside of the country. They might go to states within America, but they don't travel to the Middle East. They don't travel
Mm,
to Asia. They don't travel to Africa. They don't travel to Europe. Maybe Europe on occasion, but like they do not see the rest of the world. And the lens that they have is what they see on social media or on, Fox News or CNN or MSNBC. That's their perspective of the world without actually
mm,
going out and seeing it. And
yeah.
Iowa is a microcosm within a microcosm of that. So I was like very sheltered from all of these things in the world. especially things in the East, and Orthodoxy being one of those. Didn't even know that it existed. I grew up in it was a very like Calvinistic Protestant church, and we were told, all I knew of was the Protestants, different sects of the Protestant church, and the Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were told growing up as many Protestants, like Catholics aren't even Christians, those people worship Mary and they worship idols and all this stuff, and they're not even Christians, and they're blasphemers, and they're idol worshippers and all these things, right? Like I was always told this narrative about the Catholic Church, and so I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just stay away from the Catholic Church. I've never even visited, never even like talked to Catholics. And then with Orthodoxy, I just didn't even know it existed. So my worldview was very narrow and pointed down one road.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, when I traveled, I've been to I think 27 countries now. And so when I would go to Eastern Europe, I remember the first time I saw an Orthodox church was a few years ago, and that was in Georgia. um, Georgia is a very Orthodox country, and I I remember like visiting these churches, and they were beautiful churches, and I would go and visit them, and I thought they were Catholic. I didn't even know. I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
know what it was until later. I found out, oh, that's an Orthodox church. What is Orthodoxy? Didn't really think of it too much back then. Again, this was probably 3 years ago, or long, 4 years ago. But then um, I came to Orthodoxy this year when I visited the Holy Land, when I went to Palestine, and saw Orthodoxy in its fullness,
Mm-hmm.
for the first time, where it started, like where the church started. I should back up though and preface that, um, as an adult for 7 years, I basically stepped away from the church altogether entirely. I stepped away from the church and God, and I told people that like, oh, I don't go to church. I don't like religion. I'll just have a relationship with Jesus, and I'll like read my Bible and pray, which
Mm-hmm.
is uh, which is something that I see a lot of people falling into these days, especially with the rise of secularism. And the reality of that is, I wasn't praying. I wasn't reading my Bible more than maybe once or twice a month. It
Mm-hmm.
was not a real relationship. I was not connected to the vine, so to speak, connected to Christ. I was very separate. I wouldn't even have called myself a Christian in those years.
Mm-hmm.
Then, fast forward to this year in April when I went to Palestine, I saw Orthodoxy for the first time, and most of the Christians there that still live in Palestine are Orthodox. Some are Catholic, very few are like Protestant or Lutheran, maybe, but
Mm-hmm.
the majority of them are Eastern Orthodox. And in most of the Christian areas of like the Levant or Turkey, or parts of Northern Africa, or like the parts of the Middle East and Northern Africa that are still Christian, they're primarily Orthodox.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, this kind of ties into my whole story of what happened in Palestine. But yeah, I was exposed to the churches there. I was exposed to a good friend of mine who is a Palestinian who still lives there. He lives in Jerusalem. He's a very good friend of mine. He does ministry work and humanitarian work for Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank, and I work with him still on a weekly basis. But that's the guy who kind of introduced it to me. He would take me to these churches, and he was showing me like all these historical sites, all of these historical churches, like these underground catacomb style churches where Christians would go and worship in the first century, and they were all Orthodox. And I thought, what is this Orthodoxy stuff?
Mm-hmm.
It's very intrigued. And also, you see a difference in the Christians and how they live their life. The Orthodox Christians, it can be also be a cultural thing. Like the culture in Palestine is very different. Here in America, it's very individualistic. Over there, it's more of a collectivist society.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there's some bleed, some spillover of the culture into the Christians there, but also just what I see in Orthodox Christians is they're much more devout, God fearing, and they live the life that a Christian, is trying or should be trying to live on a daily basis. And that struck me and that hit me. And so seeing the Christians there, visiting the churches and kind of like diving into church history is it's what started it for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Orthodoxy is definitely an interesting thing because I'm the same way. I've been Protestant, my whole life, and I like being Protestant. I think a lot of the views are similar. And one thing I've been big on, and you kind of touched on it, is there's a stigma, and I'm curious if it's more in Protestantism than it is within Catholicism or Orthodoxy. But there's a stigma that the other guys can't be Christians. Um, and that's something that's really been on my mind recently. Because it's something I kind of believed for a while. I was like, okay, can a Catholic even be a Christian? And I'm at the point now. I'm like, man, I think that this is, the enemy trying to separate out the churches.
Yeah, of
Imagine the
course.
coalition. If we had all of the Protestants worldwide, all of the Catholics worldwide, and all of the Orthodox Church worldwide working together towards a common goal, how much more could we achieve than we don't achieve right now, split up? And what did Paul speak to in First Corinthians? I think in the very first chapter. I know it's towards the beginning, but he's like, why is there division among you? And I get it. There are secondary beliefs that aren't crucial to our salvation that we might disagree on, and people interpret differently or whatever it may be. But ultimately, if we believe that Jesus Christ was Lord and He came down, He is God incarnate as a human. He died for our sins, rose again on the third day. That's being a Christian, is believing in that and letting that push your life and serving Jesus as Lord. And I would love to see more worldwide, a coalition of Christians. I think something like 20% of the world in total is Christian. That may be a wrong number, but versus when you split it up into all these different, we split up into religions, into different religions when it's really not, and it separates us and it weakens us, and that's something that's sad to see because we've talked a little bit about religion through text or on the phone or whatever, and it's like we agree on almost everything and everything that is
The
crucial
main
to
message,
salvation.
yeah,
Exactly.
the main message of Christ and who Christ was, who
Hmm.
He is. Um, like, yes, I think there's Christians in the Catholic Church, the Orthodox
Hmm.
Church, and the Protestant Church, and I believe there's people who are going to go to hell
Hmm.
in the Orthodox Church, the Catholic Church, and the Protestant
Hmm.
Church. So, for me, it came down to finding the church where, you see, when I was doing research into church history, I wanted to practice the faith as close to the apostles as possible. Like if I had an apostle as my teacher, if I could be a disciple of the apostle of Paul or John
Hmm.
or Peter, what would that look like?
Hmm.
And if you could take a Christian from the first century and plop them in a church today, which church would they agree with the most or recognize the most? Would it be a Protestant church? Would it be a Catholic church? Or would it be an Orthodox
Hmm.
church? And for me, the answer that I came to was it would 100% be an Orthodox church. Now, yes, the Orthodox Church has changed a bit over time, traditionally, or not, as culturally, I'll
Hmm.
say. The traditions, we were told to hold fast to traditions, hold fast to the traditions. This was told to us by Paul, because before we even had the Bible, we had the traditions that was passed down to the apostles, and then from Pentecost, passed down from the apostles to the church fathers. We didn't have a Bible till like the fourth
Hmm.
century. All they had was tradition and oral word of mouth, oral tradition, and the tradition passed down from the apostles. And so when I look back, I try to think which church is the one that is most similar to those traditions that the apostles passed down, and I found that to be in the Orthodox Church. But yes, I think that the main message is still captured in the Protestant most Protestant churches. I won't say all of
Hmm.
them, um, and the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. And I do agree that there is a lot of division amongst the churches, and I don't like that. And at times, maybe I add to it because I promote orthodoxy a lot. I try not to talk down or bash on other Christians unless I see something as like a blatant, harmful heresy. I'll call that out. But as far as like calling Protestants not Christians or going to Catholics and saying, you guys aren't
Hmm.
Christians, we should not be doing that. We should be lifting each other up. And yeah, we can have open discourse and debates on theological differences. But if we're wagging fingers at each other and saying, you're going to hell because you're Protestant or you're Orthodox, you're going to hell, we should not be doing that. That just puts a black eye on Christianity and it turns unbelievers away from the church altogether.
Hmm. No, I agree 100%. I mean, if we're really wanting to fight division within the church, the division we should fight is really and push for is those of lukewarm Christians, where they're not really acting in a Christian manner, yet call themselves Christians. That would be the bigger problem than whether you're Orthodox or Catholic or Protestant. To me, is these people who claim to be Christian and yet don't act on it, don't have that sanctification they're constantly chasing after and trying to grow closer to the Lord day by day. I think that's one of the biggest problems we see. And if there's anything that's going to tear down the church quicker, I think that's number one. I think that's the number one issue. Kind of like what you said is, there's people in all of these branches of Christianity that will be in hell. I mean, and it's sad to say,
Yeah.
but they will be. And some people need a wake up call. It's like, hey, like And maybe this is a Protestant issue. I'm not sure. I'm not super familiar with the Orthodox side or the Catholic side, but so many people or these Sunday morning Christians. It's like we go to church on Sunday, but we don't live by it the rest of the week. It doesn't matter, and that's one of the problems that I see. And I'm like, no, no, no. You're supposed to live the same way Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I mean, all the way throughout the week. You're supposed to be the same person. That church is just a grouping of people trying to worship the Lord and get a message from it and trying to grow closer to Him. And it's supposed to add to your already personal relationship with Christ, not be the only part of your relationship with Christ.
Yeah, that was one thing that another thing, I mean, I had a whole list of things that I didn't like about the Protestant church. And that was one of the reasons why I left and left for 7 years. Also, a lot of it was just personal pride and arrogance. And I just honestly didn't care about the church. But there were other reasons that I, didn't like the Protestant church. I saw a lot of that lukewarm Christian mindset in the Protestant church. I saw a lot of people who would come to church on Sunday and then go to the club on
Mm,
Friday or whatever and just live a completely different life. And they would also be very judgmental, and they would be the ones to cast the first stone, so to speak, but then go off and commit their own sins and not hold themselves accountable. I saw that. And one thing, and that's in the Orthodox Church too. It's in the Catholic Church too. But the difference that I found between lukewarmness in the Orthodox Church and the Protestant churches, I think the message of salvation, and it's a bit of a different message of salvation in the Protestant church. I believe that it breeds lukewarmness. Because as an Orthodox, we do not believe that salvation is a one-time acquisition. You just say this magic prayer, believe in Jesus, and you've acquired your ticket to heaven and you're good to go. You can go live your life however you want. In Orthodoxy, we do not subscribe to that idea. And in the Protestant church, like that's a mindset.
mm,
I know a lot of people who are Protestant Christians who say, "Oh, I'm Christian, I believe in Jesus and all this stuff," but they go to church like once a month, or they go to church on Christmas or Easter, and they live a completely ungodly life, completely separated from the vine, which is Christ. They have no fruits. They are not living a Christian lifestyle at all, and they think they're good to go.
mm,
They really think that they're going to be in heaven one day, living this life that is so separate from God because they think that they've acquired their ticket to
mm,
heaven. And that's something I just don't believe in anymore after, converting to the Orthodox Church. The idea of salvation in Orthodox Church is being in constant communion with Christ. And he tells us that he is the vine and we are the branch. And if we are a dead branch, if we're not bearing fruit, we will be cut off from the
mm,
vine and we'll be cut off from Christ and the kingdom of heaven. So it's not, and people, this is the other thing that the Protestant church always told us, always told me, is that, Catholics believe in a works-based salvation. And Protestants will also say that the Orthodox believe in a works based salvation. This is simply not true. This is a straw man argument to discredit the Orthodox and Catholic Church. We don't believe in works based salvation. We don't think that, we still believe that your good works are dirty rags to Christ.
mm.
They mean
Yeah.
nothing. We rest in the finished work of Christ coming down, living a perfect life, dying on a cross, and rising again from the dead to pay for our sins. We rest in assurance of that finished work of Christ. But just like James says, that faith without works is dead.
Mm,
We apply that to our life. We take that serious. Faith without works is dead. So you have no faith if you don't have works. If you're not living in Christ, how can you say you have faith? How can you say you're connected to the vine?
mm,
So, and there's a concept in Orthodoxy that I love. It's a Greek word, and it's called theosis. And theosis is the idea of being more like Christ every single day, drawing closer spiritually to Christ every single day.
mm,
And there's a reason we have monks in monasteries who have left the world. They have turned their back on every worldly thing to separate themselves and live in a monastery. And literally all they do is pray and worship God. That's all they do. And their pursuit is theosis. It's to draw themselves as close to God as they possibly can. They've completely turned away from the world, like everything.
mm,
Um, and so in Orthodoxy, that is the concept. It's living in repentance. It is being baptized. It's partaking in the Lord's Supper, eating the body and blood of Christ, praying, fasting, living the life that we're called to live as members of the body of Christ constantly.
mm.
So that's the idea of salvation. But yes, we're rest assured in the finished work of Christ. We are saved by grace.
Yeah, I mean that the works-based salvation people. I can't, I can't get behind it, because it's not biblical in my opinion. In any way you spin it, it just has to be a misinterpretation. If you do believe in a works-based salvation, I think it's a misinterpretation, and it's not what Christ really did for us, and understanding the true grace that came from Him. So no, it's interesting to hear the kind of the orthodoxy view on a lot of this stuff because like you said, I am somewhat shielded to it, I guess you could say. I've been in Orthodox churches overseas. I've never attended a service or anything like that, but I've seen several of the most beautiful churches I've ever seen. That are Orthodox churches and also Catholic ones I've seen overseas as well. And there's a certain this is something, and I think we spoke about it on the phone before. There's a certain I think the word is veneration for God that Catholics and the Orthodox Church tend to have that Protestants don't. Y'all understand the holiness of God in a special way and have a reverence for God that a lot of times Protestants just don't have. And I
Yeah.
wish that we had a little more of that. And not to say that people don't, and individually people may, and I'm not trying to throw off any churches specifically or anything like that. It's just it's a different, for instance, I wear this hat to church most of the time, and I take it off whenever I get to my seat, and I don't wear it during the service. But I'll never forget when we were overseas, and me and my wife wanted to go see one of the churches. um, we go in there, and somebody stopped me at the door. It was like, whoa, 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 you can't wear that in here. And I was like, oh, my bad, my bad. Take the hat off, and kind of
Mhm.
get used to that type of thing because it was different. Yeah, you go to those churches, and I believe I forgot what the exact rules were, but like the men cannot have any sort of sleeveless shirt on. I believe it was. The women have to wear. I think they had to cover their knees. Maybe was the rule.
Veils, maybe head veils for
I
women.
didn't. I have not been in one with a head veil that required the head veil. I know it was like no strapless shirts or spaghetti strap or anything. And it's been
Yeah.
different. I've been to several spots with several different churches, denominations, or whatever it may be. Catholic or Orthodox, and you don't see that a lot. And it's not to say that's not to say that God doesn't accept us as we are, or because we're wearing a certain thing, but it's in reverence for
Yeah.
the spirit being there, the temple of God being there, and I think that's something that's super interesting in the Orthodox Church. But I do want to kind of shift gears a little bit and dive in. I want to hear about a little bit about your time in Palestine, and I know you went there in April, and I believe that's about the time you started your current social media account, and it's really taken off. It seems nearly 400,000 followers. I want to hear about that time that you had there. What did you see? And because you saw a lot of the stuff that I and you speak about, and other influencers as well. You saw it firsthand, to where I can only speak about it through through news articles or through post on X or Instagram, or from hearing guys like you speak on it. I have not been there and seen it firsthand. I'm sure many of my viewers, and probably many of your viewers as well, have not actually been there. I'm curious what you saw there.
Yeah. So I wanted to go there for, I mean, a multitude of reasons. But I started getting into this whole space, this activism space and social media space, talking about this stuff back in March, like very late of March, like March 27th, I think was my first post about this stuff on Instagram. And within like a week, it kind of blew up. People seemed to really like my takes and how I was, framing things and talking about things. And I had always planned to go to Palestine. My initial plan, and this was back in 2024 when Rafah was getting annihilated. In the summer of 24, um, the Palestinians in Gaza were told to move to the southern border or to the southern tip of Gaza, which was Rafah, and they were getting just slaughtered. Refugee camps were getting hit discriminately. And I was like, I was pretty pissed off, and I had enough of it, of watching it online here in the States, and I wanted to go. So I looked at ways, and this was 2024. I looked into ways of going to Gaza, and there was just nothing. There's no possible way to get there unless you were like a doctor or a surgeon or something and you worked through an organization. There was no way for like a Joe Schmo like me with just some 5 years of military experience to get in there really. So
Dr. Clyde does have
that
a
never
good ring to it,
happened.
though.
Yeah, maybe. I tried, man. I looked into it. I reached out, and this was before I had my Instagram, so I didn't have like the connections I have today.
Mhm.
Um, and so then fast forward, I kind of kept paying attention and watching. And then in March of this year, that's when I started speaking out. and I had devised this plan to go because I have connections in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, in Palestine. Jerusalem is Palestine, but anyways, so I have connection at the U.S. Embassy and the U.S. Consulate because I have State Department connections, and so I hit them up and I asked, "Hey, is there any nonprofits or organizations that I can donate to, or that I can maybe work at a food drive or something, anything? Like I just want to, I don't want to just keep watching this. I want to do something."
Mhm.
And so they couldn't really find me any organizations stateside that I could work for or do anything with. And there's a lot of organizations like nonprofits where you would donate to where the money in a lot of cases doesn't actually reach the people. And so I was like, okay, whatever. I'll just, I'll go there then. I'm just going to go there and figure it out and I'll find something to do there.
Mhm.
And so coincidentally, my friend was getting married in Dubai in the first week of April, and I was going to go. So I went to his wedding in Dubai, spent some time there, and then I had a plan devised to go to Tel Aviv, fly in there, and then spend about a week in Palestine and go to the West Bank because there was just no way for me to get to Gaza or anywhere near it. So I was like, okay, let me go to the West Bank and check that out. And the idea behind that was one, I wanted to find something that I could donate to or like help a food drive or something like that, some nonprofit org that I could work with. But also I wanted to go, I was already doing my Instagram at this time. I wanted to go and I wanted to see it for myself, document it, and come back with my findings because there's so many people that talk online. Again, you have these echo chambers and these little bubbles. People see something online and they think that's the truth, and they might get one narrative. Their algorithm might be feeding them one side of the story, and they really don't know what's going on.
Mhm.
And I'm the type of person that wants to go and see things firsthand before I really make decisions on what I think is going on.
Mhm.
So I had the opportunity to go. I wanted to go and see for myself and expose, what's actually going on here. So I go to Dubai, spent my time there. I was there for about 5 days, and then I booked a one-way ticket from Dubai or from Abu Dhabi to Tel Aviv. The reason I booked a one-way ticket is because I have a friend here who is in DC that works for the State Department, but this person works at the embassy in Jerusalem. They were back here for training and they kind of gave me a debrief of like, this is what you should expect going in there. This is what you should expect like going into the country with your background. I had a top secret clearance in the military, spent time in the Marine Corps. I was a military age male. I was an American. I was all these things that would have set off red flags at,
Mhm.
checkpoints or the airport or the border going into Israel. And so I was basically given this debrief, told that like there's going to be Mossad at the gates, like the gate agent at most airports most airports that have direct flights to Tel Aviv, that departing airport. So in that case, Abu Dhabi had a Mossad agent working the ticket counter. Yes, yes. This is also information that is important to people who do want to go.
Uh-huh.
They will put Mossad agents at these ticket counters and have them be flight attendants. They'll have them be the ticket counter lady, the gate agent, and that's like your first checkpoint you have to get past. So I had to
Hmm.
get past the Mossad agent or whoever it was in Abu Dhabi, and then so basically I didn't know if I was going to get in. Got past that, got on the flight, flew there, landed in Tel Aviv, and in Tel Aviv at the airport, I think it's called Ben Gurion Airport, but it's just a surveillance center. They have cameras everywhere on every corner. They have biometric machines everywhere. You're supposed to go to the biometric machine somehow. I skipped past that. Um, they have Mossad agents walking around. They have people everywhere, just eyes everywhere. And so I was kind of on high alert. Like I said, I already had my Instagram. I had about 10,000 followers at this time, and I was already
Mhm.
talking about Israel. So I was kind of worried about that. Also, my background with the military and stuff. I didn't
Mhm.
know if I was going to be able to get in,
Mhm.
but in it was lucky. I was lucky because I went during Passover. So Passover is like their biggest holiday.
Mhm.
And during Passover, they're not supposed to work. Like you're not supposed to work during most hours of the day. And so at the airport, there was hardly anybody working. There was one lady working the check-in or the immigration counter. When you go in, you stamp your passport and get in, there
Mhm.
was one lady and a big snake's line of people trying to get in. So I think she was just a lady who got stuck there on a holiday, didn't want to be there, and she was just stamping and letting people in. So I
Mhm.
got very lucky. And I got in just fine, grabbed my bags, and then I hadn't even booked a hotel because I didn't know if I was going to get in. So after I got through and grabbed my bags, I sat down and I booked a hotel in Jerusalem. And then I got in a taxi and I drove to Jerusalem. I got there to my hotel. I stayed right across the street from East Jerusalem, the old city of East Jerusalem, which is the Palestinian quarters. So I was right there in the heart of like the Palestinian quarters. And so I get there and I have a friend who works at the embassy. And so my friend came to meet me and we walked around Jerusalem. My friend kind of showed me around, got my bearings and stuff. We got lunch, explained to me like this is the dynamic of what's going on here. Also, this person who works at the embassy, um, this person is very anti host nation. So he's kind of giving me a real rundown of how things are and what to watch out for and like what my conduct should be there. He's kind of giving me like my brief upon entry in country. And so do that, get lunch. He goes home. I go back to my hotel. That was day one in Jerusalem. Day two in Jerusalem was kind of like my tourist day slash figure out how I'm going to get to the West Bank because I didn't have anything concrete planned yet. So I went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. I walked to Via de la Rosa. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, if anyone doesn't know, it's the church where Christ was crucified and buried. And
Did you take a
I,
hype video like Vance did?
I did not. I took pictures and videos, but I did not, do a fake little cross and like touch it like I was touching the Western Wall. It was pretty funny, man. You just see, I mean, he's got his Hindu wife and going in there and
Mhm,
he's like greeting the patriarch of Jerusalem, who I don't know if the patriarch of Jerusalem knows much about Vance,
mhm.
um, but I don't think he's really a Christian. I think that was all for
Yeah.
show. Like
Oh,
that was
100%. It was a
all.
PR stunt. It was I need to gain some credibility back because people
Yeah.
realize that I went and kissed the wall. And
Oh
it,
yeah, yeah.
it,
Look at this Catholic Christian vice president coming to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre instead of the Western Wall. Like, and
mhm.
the funny thing is, I realized no president. I've never, not that I've seen. I'm not seen a president go there.
Yeah, I
Like they always
haven't.
go to the
Mhm.
Western Wall.
Yeah, every single time. And what's sad to me is, man, people fell for that crap. It's like, oh, this is awesome. This is based. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is so obviously fake. Like it's that's beyond it. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Yeah, but anyways, I go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. That was amazing. Seeing that, you can go right up to Golgotha, where the cross was, and you can see
Mhm,
the exact spot where the cross was placed. It's very cool. And then if you walk down from Golgotha, there's a slab, and that's the slab where JD Vance was touching and like praying or whatever.
mhm,
And that slab, the actual slab he touched, where his fingers touched, is not the actual slab Christ was on, but below that there was a that was the place where his the Theotokos, Mother Mary, cleaned his body and prepared him for the tomb. And then you walk to this corridor, this big atrium, and the tomb is right there, and you can go in and you can see the tomb, and it's pretty cool. It's interesting because the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was destroyed in 1009 AD. Not completely destroyed, but much of it was destroyed. So the original tomb that they built, because Queen Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine, she built a church, I think in the fourth century, and but much of it was destroyed and then it was rebuilt, so the tomb
mhm,
was rebuilt. So there's not much left of like the original, I
mhm,
guess it would be limestone maybe, tomb. There's like a couple rocks and slabs inside of there, that are the original parts of the tomb. Anyways, that was super cool. It's kind of like the second day was like my tourist day in Jerusalem, and I again was also like I was going around Jerusalem and I was checking out the vibes. Like, what is the environment like here with Muslims, Christians, and Jewish people?
mhm,
Because it's microcosm of all three Abrahamic religions living in this tiny little city crammed together. And in the old city was built in the 1500s, I believe. Um, you have the Armenian quarters, which is like the Christian quarters. Then you have the Palestinian quarters. Then you have, I think, the Jordanian quarters, and then you have the Jewish quarters. And so the Jewish quarters obviously is just Jews. It's primarily East or Orthodox Jews, and then you have the Palestinian quarters, which is a mix of Christians and Muslims, and then the Armenian quarters is primarily Christian Palestinians and Armenian Palestinian or Armenian Christians. But it's very, very interesting to see that environment. You have IDF soldiers everywhere, and what's it called? They're like border patrol. I don't remember what the name of their agency is. It's like a border patrol agency. But you have guards everywhere, armed guards walking through the streets. You have machine gun little pillboxes in like tourist sites and all over the place. And it's very interesting. When you go to the Palestinian quarters, it's very welcoming. They're all very nice and peaceful and friendly, and they want to talk to you and ask where you're from and invite you into their shop and all this stuff. Muslim and Christian alike. And again, mind you, I'm wearing my cross like out the whole time. And they're all very nice and peaceful and friendly and stuff. And then I go to the Jewish quarters and it's like a totally different vibe.
Mm.
Now, I wasn't spit on like people ask all the time. I was never spit on by any Jewish people or anything
Yeah,
like that.
only once or whatever. Like, what's his face said? I don't know if you've seen that clip. He said, "I only got spit on once," and he was trying to defend him. Um,
Oh, Officer Tatum.
yeah, yes, Officer
Yeah,
Talmud. Yeah,
Officer Tatum. But yeah, I mean, so there's a clear difference between the Palestinian quarters and the Jewish quarters as far
mhm,
as like how you're treated and like the hospitality. Like again, I wasn't attacked, I wasn't spit on in the Jewish quarters, but it is different.
mhm,
You go over there and people don't want to talk to you, they don't want to come up to you as much. They kind of look at you like you're out of place and stuff. And I did go to the Western Wall. I've got a lot of videos of that on my
mhm,
Instagram, but I went to the Western Wall, and when I went there, they have like this security all around the Western Wall because they don't want people coming in with bombs or guns or anything and spraying the crowd of Jews at the wall. So you go to the security and the guy wands me down and I go through a metal detector and I have my cross out like this and he grabs it and he's like, you have to tuck that in before you go in here. And I'm like, why? And he alluded to it was for my safety. He's like, he didn't say it exactly like you're going to get beat up if you go in there, if you have it out, but he alluded to basically like for my safety that I should
mhm,
tuck it in. And he wouldn't let me go in until I did. So I tucked it in and then I walked in. And then as I was walking around, I took it back out.
mhm,
But when I took it out in the area like where the Western Wall is, a bunch of weird looks, a bunch of people like side eyeing me and staring at me. I definitely felt like uncomfortable, not like I was going to get killed or something, but unwelcomed. Definitely like
mhm,
unwelcomed when I was there. I was there by myself, just had my cross out. And I was taking videos, but I wasn't like harassing people and putting my camera in their face. Just kind of like taking videos of myself walking around. And
mhm,
yeah, you definitely feel a shift in the vibe when you go over to the Jewish quarters.
mm,
Um, but yeah, then I left the Western Wall, came back out, and my plan, this was the second day. My plan on the third day was to go to the West Bank and visit that and stuff and see what was over there and see like the environment and how the Palestinians are treated. And I didn't have anything set up concrete, but I talked to my friend at the embassy and I asked if my friend could get me like any contacts, anybody to drive me over there. He found a taxi driver, but that fell through later that night on the second day. And so I go back to my hotel and I'm like, oh, I don't have anything planned for tomorrow, but I'm supposed to go to the West Bank and nothing is planned. So I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna go find a gym, work out, and I'll try to figure out in the morning. So I go to a gym in Jerusalem. I get a pump, and then I leave the gym. And I'm like, I'm hungry. Need to go get some food. So I walk back to the old city and I go to the Palestinian quarters. And this is like 10:30 at night. I'm walking back, go back to the old city, and I find this Lebanese place. This is where the story gets kind of cool.
mhm,
Um, so I go to this Lebanese place and I get a falafel sandwich and some fries and stuff. And I'm in there and there's like it's me, the guy who works there, and then three or four elderly Palestinian gentlemen just hanging out in the restaurant. And so I finish my food and I walk out of the restaurant and I walk into the streets and I pull my phone out. I'm going to look up my address to my hotel and walk back. And I'm like, I'm just going to call it a night and I'll try to figure something out in the morning to go to the West Bank. And then all of a sudden, one of the older Palestinian guys, he taps me on the shoulder from behind. I turn around, he's smoking a cigarette and he just starts chopping it up with me. He's just like, this is how they are. Like, they just want to talk to you. They're very nice and welcoming,
mhm,
hospitable. He just starts chopping it up. He's just smoking his cig and asking me like, oh, where are you from? What are you doing here? Oh, where have you been so far? What are your plans? I'm like, oh, I'm just a Christian tourist from America visiting the Holy Land for the first time, blah, blah, blah. And also, mind you, I'm trying to like tread very lightly with strangers who I talk to. I'm not just going out there, even if it's a Palestinian person. I'm not just going to be like, "Hey, I'm a Christian and I want to support you guys and I want to go to the West Bank and expose what's going on,"
Hmm.
because actually, there's Palestinians that are compromised in Jerusalem.
Mm.
Maybe not by their own will, but and you'll see this in videos. And what's the guy,
Hmm.
Tommy Robinson? He just did a video. I saw it on YouTube where he went to these Palestinian uh, businesses and he talked to the local Palestinians in Jerusalem. And he's like, "Hey, what do you think about what is it? What's it like for you being a Muslim Palestinian living in Jerusalem? Are you safe? Do the Israelis attack you?" And then he puts the microphone in their face, and it's like they're not going to say yes. They're not going to be truthful with you because
Yeah.
if they talk poorly or tell the truth about the occupation, they're going to get their business shut down. They're going to get their license taken away. They're going to receive massive punishment if they talk
Hmm.
negatively. They don't have freedom of speech there. So of course you're going to be like, "Oh, yeah, it's great here. Yeah, the Israelis are nice. Yeah, I like the IDF." And he's just totally painting this picture, this false narrative. So, but anyways, there are Palestinians there who are somewhat compromised by Israel. So I had to be
Hmm.
careful with who I was talking to and how I was, framing things. So I'm talking to this guy, the older guy, and you know, I'm starting to get to know him a little bit better and I'm feeling a little more comfortable with him because he tells me that he used to work for the UN for 30 years and he used to do stuff in the West Bank and he used to, he has family in Gaza and all this stuff. And he's kind of like talking more like broy, like fuck Israel type of vibes. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, maybe I can be a little bit more like guard down with this guy. And I tell him like, well, tomorrow actually I wanted to go to the West Bank and visit it. I'm a Christian. I want to go to like Bethlehem and all this stuff.
Hmm.
And he's like, oh, you want to go to the West Bank? My son-in-law, he's a tour guide. He can maybe take you. Let me call him. So he whips his phone out and he calls his son-in-law at like 11:15 at night. Gets his son-in-law on the phone. They start speaking in Arabic. I'm standing there and they're just talking. And then all of a sudden he hangs up and he's like, okay, follow me. And we walk down the street and we take a turn down this alleyway and we meet this guy, random guy in the middle of the street, 11:15 at night. And he's out there, he shakes my hand and he introduces himself. And then he invites me into his house at like 11:15. I'm a random stranger off the streets and he's just like, hey, come into my house, let's talk.
Hmm.
And so we go up there. He has a nice house, a nice place in the old city of Jerusalem. And we go in there. He introduces me to his kids and his family. He gives me some tea. We sit down in his living room and we just start talking. And he's like,
Hmm.
"So what are you here for? Like, what do you want to see? Maybe I can help." And again, I'm like a little, this is too nice, maybe a little bit too much hospitality this late. So I'm thinking like, keep my guard up. Don't tell him everything. Don't show all my cards at once. And
Hmm.
eventually like the conversation flows and I feel more comfortable with him and I told him like I want to go to the West Bank. I'm a Christian. I want to see some of the holy sites. But also I just I'm from America and we're told like one side of the story. I kind of just want to go and see what's going on. And I
Hmm.
frame it to him that way and and then he kind of gets it. He leans forward in his chair and he's like, I can show you whatever you want. And then from there we just kind of get into the meat and potatoes and
Hmm.
I was like, I want you to show me like take me to like don't sugarcoat it. Like take me to the worst parts if you're comfortable with that. And he's like, he was totally down. And I also told him that I wanted to maybe donate to an organization or help out like families in any way I could. And that night, he probably stayed up till one in the morning, 1:30, and he coordinated 9 meetups with 9 different families for him and I to go see and visit, so that I
Hmm.
could talk to them and so that we could take them food and money and help them out any way
Hmm.
we could. And he coordinated that all himself. Like I just met this
Wow.
guy uh, 2 hours ago, and he's coordinating all this stuff for me. So I go back to my hotel. He picks me up in the morning in his personal vehicle, and we drive from Jerusalem to the West Bank. And when you leave Jerusalem, you're going into a different country. I mean, you are going into Palestine. It's a different country, but it's completely occupied by the Israeli government. It's been occupied since 1967.
Hmm.
And so you can see the shift. You can see a clear difference between Jerusalem uh, environments and the West Bank. And we're driving through, and he understands where I'm at. He understands that I want to see the truth, and I don't want him to sugarcoat or lie to me. And so, as we're driving, he would just point out, like, this is a military checkpoint. This is a Israeli settlement. The Israelis knocked down a Palestinian village to build this settlement, and then he's pointing out like refugee camps. He's pointing out different like Israeli settlements and the different Palestinian villages and all this stuff. And he's explaining to me the dynamic. There's like 207, 209 checkpoints in the West
Mm.
Bank. These are checkpoints, basically like military checkpoints. As you're driving through,
Mhm.
you would get stopped randomly, and the Israelis would do a checkpoint on every vehicle coming through. So he's explaining to me the dynamic and how it works there. And then the first stop we go to is a place called Shiloh, and Shiloh is where it is believed that the tabernacle was. So that's very cool. I got to
Mm.
see that. There was some old ruins of some Byzantine Empire churches there. Very cool spot. That whole spot, because it's important to Christians, it's not important to Muslims, but it's important to Christians and Jews because it's where the tabernacle was. But that whole plot of land and all around it, there are Israeli settlements, and that plot of land is run as a tourist site by the Israelis. But this is like in Palestine. This is in the West Bank. This is like the first time I got out of the car and was exposed to like how much occupation the Israelis had there, because they had settlements all around it, and it was very like cordoned off and just owned by the Israelis.
Mm.
And so we go there and we see the site. And as we're walking out, I see two guys. These are civilians, or appeared to be civilians. They were in civilian clothes. They were Israeli men with their families, and they had M4s slung around their shoulder. And this is very common. You go there and you'll see like civilian men, Israeli men walking around with M4s and maybe like a belt with a couple of extra mags on it. You'll
Wow.
never see civvies walking around. You'll see them walking around Jerusalem. All
Yeah.
of a sudden, you'll just see a random dude with an M4 slung around his shoulder. And so I see those guys and I kind of snap some pictures and videos of them. Then we get in the car and we go to the next. We went to a few other places that day. I don't remember where we went next, but we ended up going to a place called Nablus and Jenin that day. And Nablus and Jenin, they are two of the worst. It's like Hebron, Jenin, and Nablus. They're like notorious for being the roughest parts of the West Bank.
Mhm.
And in the West Bank, it's split up into C quarters, B, and A quarters. So since 1967, C has been like the worst, most occupation, B the next worst occupation wise, and then A the best occupation wise. Now today, and ever since October 7th, it's just been full blown occupation all throughout C, B, and A
Mhm.
quarters of the West Bank. Full blown military occupation. So we go to Jenin and we go to a church and we meet his friend there, and his friend was the one who kind of coordinated the meetup between us and these families. And we went to a grocery store and we got some food and some cash, and then we drove and we met up with, I think it was 6 families that first day. We went and visited 6 families. These were Christian families in
Mhm.
the Jenin and Nablus area, and they were super nice, super hospitable. When we went in, we dropped off the stuff and then we visited with them, and I just wanted to talk to them and like get all of their individual stories, like what is life like here in the
Yeah.
West Bank. And I had a series of questions I asked them, like, what is it like living with Muslims and Christians? What is it like living with the Israelis? What is it like, not being able to leave the West Bank? What is your financial situation? Like, can you work? Asked them all these questions, and congruently through all 9 families that I visited, the main problem they had was they didn't have jobs. They couldn't work. The economy is crushed there. It's a
Mm.
tourist-based economy, and during the war, or during the genocide, like tourists aren't going over there. There was like hardly any tourists in the Holy Land when I was there. So their economy has crashed because they survive off the tourist economy. And if they want to work, let's say, I talked to a couple guys that were like blue collar workers. They were like construction guys or electricians or something, but they can't get permits to build new houses for Palestinians. They can't get permits to do anything.
Mm.
Um, the Israelis will come in and bulldoze their homes, and then if they want to build new ones, they have to get these permits, and they just don't get the permits to do them. So these guys don't have work. Like
Mm.
families don't have work, and if you don't have work, you don't have money. So that was like the main issue congruently through all 9 families that we visited. But they were
Wow.
super nice. Like these are people that don't have anything, man. Like they're very poor. They're living in houses that are leaking, that have cracks in them, that have doors that are like plywood, you know,
Mm.
stuff like that. And um you would have like families that would be like 9, 10, 12 people deep in one house because they're limited on resources and money. The extended family would come and stay with one family. So you might have the grandparents, you might have cousins, uncles, aunts, all that stuff staying under one roof because they kind of just have to band together and live together. It's pretty dystopian. It's like it looks kind of like the end of the world there,
Mhm.
dystopian like, and people are just kind of they're just surviving, man.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, but we did that, and then Next day, we visited like three more families. We wrapped up. We did like a full day, sun up to sundown, in the West Bank that first day. And then another thing I wanted to point out that I saw is, so the Israelis control everything. It's full occupation in the West Bank, and they control their electricity, they control their economy, they control their food supply and their water supply. And so the water situation, since October 7th, the Israelis give the Palestinians water 1 day a week. 1 day a week they get running water. And so the other 6 days out of the week, Palestinians have to have these water tanks that they put up on their, the side of their house or whatever, to
Mhm.
have water for showering and drinking and whatever else. And we'd be driving by, and sometimes we would see these empty water tanks on the ground on the side of the house, and the water tanks had bullet holes in them. And I was like, what is going on here? And he's like, the Israelis, yeah, they come by and they shoot up the water tanks. So not only
Wow.
do they give them water once a week, but then the water they do have, they come by and they shoot it up.
That's crazy to hear firsthand because I even mentioned once or twice on my Instagram about the essential drought that the Palestinians are going through because they're not being given water by the Israelis. But to see it firsthand, to hear you say that, and then the fact that when they try to store anything that they can, it gets bullet holes through it. Like that's just like the most middle finger thing. Like, hey, screw you. Like I'm not even gonna let you have water on these other days. Good luck. That man, the whole situation breaks my heart. But it just it's like it gets worse. Like your heart breaks more and more and more the more you hear.
Yeah, it's constant harassment, and that's not all they do. I mean, they'll throw Molotov cocktails in their windows, they'll vandalize their homes, their cars, they attack monasteries, they attack Christian churches, they attack mosques, they
Mm.
attack children. They interesting story. 3 days before I got there, the person that I know who works at the embassy, he had to go identify two American bodies that were these were like 14-year-old boys that were in the West Bank just playing with their cousin. It was three boys. It was two American Palestinians and then one, I think their cousin who lived in Palestine. And these three boys got lit up 3 days before I got there. And my friend that I know at the embassy had to go and identify those bodies. And the kids were shot because the report that came out that the IDF gave our embassy was, oh, these three boys were throwing rocks at cars and endangering civilians, so we had to open up on them. They discharged over 90 rounds, so like three mags into these kids, just opened up on them, killed two of them. One of them was in critical condition when I left, and these were two American boys. And I was like, what the hell are we gonna do about it? Like, what is the embassy doing anything? And he's like, nope, can't do anything. Like this is in the Israelis' hands, and we can't route it up to DC. Like DC's not gonna do anything. It's just gonna get brushed under the rug. So that's the stuff that
Mm.
happens. Also, like they would have from the Israeli settlements, they'll have sewage pipes that flow down and they open up in the Palestinian villages. Like they're just literally shitting on them.
Oh my god, it's like they find every single way to not only kill and harass and torture, but to try and humiliate and just they everyone's probably heard the Talmudic references and such, but it's like they view these people and us as less than human. Um, they truly do when you hear stories like that. And it's like I said, it's crazy to hear it firsthand from somebody who's seen it. You hear stories, and then you get the $7,000 a post influencers coming in and say, no, 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 it's all fake. That's not real. It's just Hamas propaganda. And it's like, I tend to side with the guys getting genocided a whole lot more than I side with the people who are putting out the propaganda.
Yeah.
But to hear it firsthand from an American Marine who's been there and seen it and experienced it, and really probably lived it to some extent for the week or two that you were there. Wow, it brings even more realism to me, and I think to a lot of people listening right now because this is real. I didn't mean to say it
Yeah,
like that, but
and that's the thing also that people don't understand is I've tried to shed more light on the West Bank because that doesn't get much light shit on it because Gaza has taken the limelight and rightfully so. Like they're getting genocided. Everybody's focusing on Gaza, but in the West Bank, it's a death by a thousand cuts. It's still a wasteland. It's still a terrible place for Palestinians. They still want to annex it. They're
Mhm.
still trying to annex the West Bank entirely and turn it into Israel. And they have complete military occupation, and they have since 1967. So like this whole thing of like, especially the ceasefire and people thinking that it's over, it's not over, and it hasn't been over for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Um, and it's interesting too for me to hear how you speak of the people, because there's also this, and I would probably label it under propaganda, but it's like somehow they want to skew it as if every Palestinian is some form of terrorist. And I think you would probably agree with me in a sense of, with Hamas, I don't necessarily support a lot of the stuff Hamas does as a terrorist, group, and killing innocent people and such. But at the same time, I understand where a lot of it comes from, because it's a revolt in a sense. It's like, hey, this is, our people are getting killed and murdered, and we want to stop this. And but the Palestinian people, a lot of them, these Christian families that you saw, are good people who, like
Yeah,
you said, are hospitable and coming in and kind. The 11:15 at night, and that wasn't, they're bringing you in Jerusalem to talk to you and just see who you are. I mean, they're still human beings, and they're still good people
yeah.
there, and people lose that. It's like they don't comprehend that. What if this was happening the next street over from your house here in America? How would you feel? And people, I don't know. I just feel like people don't comprehend that this is actually happening. This isn't a movie. This isn't some crazy not true thing. Like this is really happening to people there who are good people. And it, like I said, it just breaks my heart to hear it, to see it. I've seen more awful videos of some of the children that have been killed, whether that was in Gaza or in Palestine or wherever it may be. It's brutal to really comprehend and understand. And I hope that that conveys to a lot of people who want to put themselves out there and find a way to help. And I am curious about this from the States, and being and having an experience there. Do you know of any ways to genuinely help from here, where it's not going to get, stolen or whatever it may be?
Yeah, it's difficult. I had a nonprofit. I had a GoFundMe. I had
Mhm.
a simple GoFundMe that I threw up real quick because there was some families that really needed some help urgently. So I made a GoFundMe a few months back, raised about $40,000 on that GoFundMe, and it did a lot for a lot of families in the West Bank. The issue is it's hard to get money in there. I had my GoFundMe taken down twice,
Mhm.
and then I was not the beneficiary. Like it was not going to my bank account. It was going to the bank account of the person who was there. And so this was a Palestinian individual, and they got flagged for um, accepting this money in Israel. Basically, Israel flagged them for accepting this money and thinking they were doing nefarious things with the money. But all they were doing was buying food and clothes and water and stuff for the families and helping them, with medical bills and stuff like that, pay off debt, stuff like that. That's where the money was going. But Israel blocked their ability to receive the funds because they thought they were doing nefarious things with the money. So it's difficult. And right now, I'm in the process of working with my good friend in Jerusalem to establish a real nonprofit organization, so that we can have something that's more concrete and stable to get money funneled over there to the West Bank. But as far as Gaza, as far as I know, it's very difficult to get anything into Gaza. Um, might be a little bit easier right now with the ceasefire, but it's always been ever since October 7th, very, very, very almost impossible to get money in there. And in most cases, you don't know where it's going. Um, as far as like name dropping organizations, I don't really have that. I can't think of any organizations that I can think of that somebody could go to their website and donate today. Um, hopefully, I'll have this nonprofit up here soon, and that can be an outlet for people to donate to,
Mhm.
and it won't get taken down. Funds won't get frozen, anything like that. But it's a work in progress to get that up and make sure that it's solid so it doesn't get taken down.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think too. On that same note, it kind of goes to show the amount of control that the Israeli government has over things. I mean, my first thought, what I think everyone's first thought is, okay, we'll send food. Well, they're not going to let food through. That's already been proven. And so then the thought is, well, we'll send money virtually, and to know that being, I mean, they're able to. We kind of could figure, but they're blocking it and saying, no, you're actually not going to receive this money into your account. It makes my mind ponder as to, wow, I wonder how many other bank accounts they have access to in that manner where they can block funds. They can truly
Oh,
lock us
dude,
out.
they have a what's it called? Pegasus, I believe, Pegasus
Hmm.
system.
Yeah,
Basically,
yeah.
Israel can see everything that
Hmm.
goes on in that country.
Mhm.
everything. It's a force field. Once you go into the force field, your phone is theirs, your contact information, your passwords, everything belongs to them. They have access to everything.
Mm.
Um, so like next time I go, and maybe I shouldn't say something, but I'll be more careful. Let's just say
Yeah.
that next time I go.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so when getting funds in, they can see that. They can see when my friend was depositing the money that I was sending him. And so that's why I'm trying to get it set up with an American bank account, and then give him access to that American bank account. Hopefully that'll make things easier.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, they have like total surveillance, Big Brother over everything. If you go in there with your phone's cooked. It's theirs. They own it. They own everything on it. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
And it goes back to the point you said of what the place looked like in a lot of ways, but what a dystopia. I mean, this is like it's out of a book, you know? This is like, I mean, like the Hunger Games or something where it's like,
Yeah,
man, they
that's what
control
I've
everything.
compared it to, dude. That's I've on other like podcasts I've compared it to like a dystopian movie like The Hunger Games. That's what it's like.
Mhm.
And I don't know when it's going to change or if it's going to change. Israel still wants to annex it. Apparently, Trump just came out saying that he was not going to allow them to annex it. Um, I don't know if that's like another PR stunt,
Yeah.
to give us like some false hope that Trump's actually standing up to them. I don't know, but I know they want to. I know that at least 65% support what was going on in Gaza, and 65% of Israeli support um, in like recent pollings, annexing the West Bank, totally
Mhm.
annexing it so that it is Israel. It's just Israel, no longer Palestine.
Yeah,
Um,
and that I mean, what's sad is the agenda is not hidden whatsoever. I mean, Greater Israel, they publicly speak about it, and it's not just West Bank, it's not just Gaza, it's literally everything surrounding them that they want control of, and they want the same amount of control, and I'm sure the same systems like Pegasus and such will go into place where they have full control over everything. Like you said, you step in, whatever you
well,
got
they've
on your
got
phone is
Palantir, man.
theirs.
They already have Palantir that they've been using in Gaza
Hmm.
for a long time now. They've been using Palantir's technology to do surveillance on the Palestinians in Gaza, and they do use it in the West Bank as well. It's going to be a complete. It's already pretty much a complete Big Brother surveillance state, but it's going to be even worse
Mm.
here soon.
You know, and what's crazy to me is that we said that, you know, the United States gave Palantir essentially access to all of our major databases of information. And, there was probably about a month and a half ago was going around the whole like kill score thing on Palantir. And, man, that's scary to think about. It's scary to think about, this is happening already there. And now it's spreading, to here, to other nations as well. And what is, if we don't do something to stop this soon, is it going to get so far out of hand where we have no opportunity to? Because, I mean, me and you both know, I'm sure there's, in some capacity, the people in Israel probably watching this podcast right now, or have some sort of access to it and know that it's happening. And the information that is, displayed, how can we even communicate without being surveillanced in some manner? It's a scary thought to me, and it's very, very dystopian. Like we said, and I don't know what the next step forwards are. That's why I hope that President Trump is legit in what he's saying. That he's going to shut this down. I wish he would take an even harder stance against it. I wish we had somebody that would come in and be ready to shut this down completely. And that, to me, that's the only way we see it is if our nation, if the United States comes in and says, we're not doing this anymore. We're not funding you, for one. And we're going to come in and shut this down, and we're going to restore freedom back to the Palestinian people and to the other people all in that area. I really see that as the maybe not the only way, but definitely the easiest, primary, number one way to see real change happen there.
Yeah, I just don't see how a two-state solution is like actually going to happen.
Hmm.
Israel's been doing this since before the Balfour Declaration. The Jewish Zionists started immigrating to Palestine back in the late 1800s, and they
Hmm.
started this in the 1800s. They've been doing this for over 100 years. So to think that we're going to be at a two-state solution anytime soon, when this is Israel's MO, they've been doing this for over 100 years. They came in before the Balfour Declaration, then they came in when the Balfour Declaration came to fruition, and you had the first Intifada immediately, like it was immediate takeover. And now we're seeing takeover at unprecedented rates. Like the annihilation of Gaza, and they're not going to answer for that. If
Hmm.
they can get away with a genocide, they're not going to stop anytime soon. And we're the number one funder of them.
Hmm.
Like we give them all their foreign aid that they need to do what they're doing. Unless we pull the plug on it, they're just going to keep doing it. Like they can get away with a genocide, man. What's to say they can't get away with annexing the West Bank? There's
Yeah.
not going to be two. I don't see how it's possible to have a two-state solution with Israel um, being there.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, I think it needs to be done away with. And, there's this whole false idea that somehow this nation state of Israel is God's chosen people. That the whole thing baffles me. That people, I don't know if you watched the Tucker and Nick interview last night. Tucker made a really good point, and I have to be careful what I say because it really stood out to me. But Nick said something along the lines of, I don't agree with these people because they're not on my side. And Tucker said, well, you weren't on your side, 10 years ago. Um, those are people, me, and I know you've been more anti-Israel longer than I have, but I was under the impression that Israel, the state there, was God's chosen people. And it's a very Protestant Christian belief. Here, at least here in the states, it's pushed incredibly hard, especially in the Protestant church. And it's just simply not true. It's not biblical. It's not historically accurate. It's just a lie, and it's propaganda. I want to see it fully done away with. Just because you call yourself Israel, that would be like if we decided, the state of Georgia to secede from the United States and called ourselves Israel. That doesn't make us God's chosen people.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't do anything. You just name something Israel. It doesn't matter. And I would like to see it completely done away with. And I think that's going to take some real change. And I think that we are on our way there because more and more people are waking up. And I talked about this with Ethan last week. I think that we're seeing a major rush and a major scramble coming from the high ups within the state of Israel who are saying, oh crap, in the last 6 months, more people have been red pilled on this than we've ever seen. It's an exponential growth, it feels like, to where I feel as if the majority of Americans are against them. And they know the direction it's going, and they know if they cannot establish what they want to establish soon, they feel as if it will be completely destroyed, and it won't be taken care of. And I think they're scrambling in a lot of ways. I'm under the belief that they killed Charlie Kirk, and I think a big part of that was because they see this transitioning happening towards an
yeah.
anti-Israel belief, and they say, "Oh crap, that guy's like we said with Palantir and surveillance. They know what he's texting, they know what he's looking up, they know what's on his Instagram feed, they understand where he's at. If he turns against them." Tens, if not hundreds of millions of people come with him. And all it takes is one time saying, look, I don't stand with Israel publicly. And it gets, it's going to get the views. And because a lot of people, and this isn't a knock on Charlie, but it's whatever he said was gospel to them. And that's what they ran with. And I think that Israel saw that happening, saw a future in which that happened, and they said we got to cut this out. We got to shut it down now. And that's my personal take on it. They needed to cut it out before he switched because if it happens after he switches, it becomes obvious exactly who kills him after he comes out publicly. I think that that's why we see a lot of these things being done sloppily in a lot of ways. We're seeing things trying to progress quickly in a not very organized sense, which is it's very odd for the Jewish people, honestly, because what I've noticed with the Jewish people in general and with Zionists is they are a very organized minority, and that's where they get their power from. They're very transnationally organized in a way that they can get stuff done, and that's kind of what I was speaking of when it comes to us Christians and all the different forms of Christianity. Is I would like to see us organized like that. There's a quote: "An unorganized minority will always beat out an I'm sorry, an organized minority will always beat out an unorganized majority." I would like to see the majority organized and organized against this common enemy, which is the state of Israel, and restore this back to Palestine, the whole area as it's been for you know what hundreds of years, if not thousands before that, where people kind of commonly called it Palestine.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're kind of like a lion with its back against the wall, just trying to expedite their plan in a sense. And yeah, there's a reason why they've always tried to pin Christians and Muslims against each other. Because if we had banded together to come against a common enemy, they would be annihilated very
Mhm.
quickly. So they understand that they're always trying to pin the left and the right against each other in American politics. They're always trying to pin against the Muslims and the Christians and all these different groups to keep the people, the lower class individuals, busy bickering and fighting with each other so that we can't focus on them. And
Mhm.
they're very organized and they're very uh, good with like Machiavellian tactics to use fear mongering to get us afraid of each other and start fighting amongst each other and bickering with each other. And in the background, they're very organized, pulling the strings and doing whatever they want. I think
Mhm.
that that was, and I talked about this after October 10th or September 10th, I told people, everybody calm down. Like everybody, I was one of the first people that posted trying to take a neutral stance and just be like, everybody needs to calm down and stop attacking your neighbor. That's literally what they want. Whoever did
Mhm.
this, they're going to spin the narrative that you need to start attacking your neighbor. And that's exactly what happened. September 11th this year was the most divided America's ever been on a September 11th since 2001. That's
Mhm.
usually the day where all Americans come together, left or right, whatever belief system, and we band together and we say, okay, we're going to be Americans today and support each other. That was the most divided the country's ever been on a September 11th. And for
Mhm.
like a solid 2 or 3 weeks, literally people were making death threats left and right. Like the left wanted to kill the right wanted to kill the left. It was everybody attacking each other. And in the
Mhm.
background, Israel's still committing a genocide. In the background, the Epstein files are being swept under the rug, all these things, right? So they
Mhm.
use these events, no matter who's doing them, they use these events to pin us against each other. And just like you said, a well organized group of a minority is going to beat out the majority if they're disorganized 10 times out of 10.
Mhm. Every time, and you see their plan that worked out, I mean, to perfection if we really talk about it. When it comes to the Charlie Kirk incident, and this is one thing about the Zionist regime, or whichever you wanna call it, left wing or right wing, they serve their own purposes and they do certain things. But no matter what, those two sides of Zionism always work together. They're very organized and they'll always fall back on their own people. And what you saw was you saw the right wing people saying, "Oh, it was a left wing guy. It was a liberal." And then you see the liberal people come out and they said, "No, no, 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 no. This guy was actually a Republican. It was your people who killed him."
Yeah.
And it's like I was sitting back and I was watching it happen and then unfold, and I'm like, guys, this is so obvious what is happening. It's to pin each other, pin us all against one another. And thank God we didn't see. I was worried civil war would break out. Honestly, I mean, not even
Yeah, me too.
exaggerating that. I
Yeah.
mean, I thought it was coming because it was such. I mean, and God forbid the people on the left. I mean, I'm not trying to throw off or start a division, but it's like, how can you celebrate the public execution of a man like that? I can't get behind that, whether or not I agree with him politically or not. Uh, I
But
cannot
that was
stand
just
it.
another way for them to egg on the right. You know,
Absolutely.
it was another way to like just troll the right, and that did piss them off. It pissed off everybody on the right, and then it was like a social media civil war for like
hmm
3 weeks, and I
hmm
thought it was gonna escalate into more physical violence. Honestly,
Yeah, yeah, I did too, and that was something I was worried about. And thank God, a lot of people shut that down. They said, "Look, we can't do that." I mean, Nick Fuentes was one. I remember I was let's see, September 10th. He didn't have a show. September 11th, I think he came on live, or maybe the next day, and he said, "Do not turn to violence." And I appreciated that because I think deep down, many of us wanted violence, out of anger.
yeah,
That was our gut instinct, was we wanted it. And he said, "Look, we can't turn to that because it's going to ruin the movement. If we destroy each other right now in this nation and turn to a civil war, the things like what Israel's doing over there, it's going to happen and it won't be stopped because we'll have to turn our attention to what's going on here first." And in many ways, that's what we saw happening. Uh-oh. What do we have here?
camera go down.
Yeah, camera just shut off. Let me see. I'm going to put this back on you, Clyde, and let you talk for a second while I get this camera fixed.
I'll answer a couple questions here. Jared, if you can hear me, I do have to get going here in maybe 5-10 minutes. Um, but I'll go through a couple questions in the chat. Let me scroll up here. Are you CIA controlled opposition? No. Where do I begin learning about Eastern Orthodox? Go to a Orthodox church, go to the liturgy. It's going to be confusing at first. After the liturgy, ask questions. Talk to people at the church, ask questions, learn more about it, read books, watch YouTube videos. Um, there's plenty of ways you can learn about Orthodoxy, but I would say start by going to a liturgy and then ask questions afterwards. You back? You're muted.
Here we go. Back now, I had to change cameras. The battery apparently died on me over there.
Yeah, mine's about to die too. So I don't know if you heard me, but I said I got maybe 5-10 minutes left.
Okay. Yeah. And for those of you on Instagram, I'm curious. I don't know if Clyde can see y'all's comments from my side. I don't think I can see them from Clyde's side. Shoot over some questions. If y'all have any questions for Clyde, real quick, anything for him to respond to, I may try to pick a couple out. In the meantime, I would love to see. I don't know. I'm assuming you had a couple of questions that you were answering there, Clyde.
Yeah, I got one. Somebody said, "Do you ever think you'll see that Palestinian that helped you see Palestine?" Yeah, he's a good close friend of mine. I talk to him on a weekly basis. Um, Usually talk to him a couple times over the phone a month, and hopefully I'll see him again. He comes to America sometimes, but hopefully I'll see him again in Palestine soon. I want to release the date when I try to go back, but hopefully soon I'll see him.
Somebody on my end commented, "What are your thoughts on Lebanon?"
Um, don't have too many strong opinions on it, but just because I don't know everything. I don't usually talk about stuff until I feel pretty comfortable talking about it. Um, but I do know has been getting hit by Israel for a long time. South Lebanon. That's another place I do need to go visit. Next time I go to the Levant, I'll probably go visit there. Let me see. Looks like Jared got kicked or something. Did you see where Israel started bombing again? Yes, I saw I mean, they started bombing them heavily today, Gaza. They started dropping bombs a lot more heavily today since they claimed that Hamas broke the ceasefire. There's not a single Muslim soul on earth that hates Christians. Maybe. I would probably argue that. Or maybe in your counter argument, you would say that if that person hates Christians, they're not a real Muslim. I'm assuming that's probably your counter argument. I would probably say there are Muslims that do hate Christians, though. Certainly, people claiming to be Muslim. Did you talk about the ceasefire break today? I talked about it briefly. I made a post about it earlier this afternoon. We talked about it briefly, but there was, Israel broke the ceasefire 47 times already. They violated it 47 times before today. And then they claim that Hamas broke it today, essentially by firing back. And then Israel started bombing them a lot heavier today.
Sorry about that. Wife to the rescue. She gave me another battery.
Yeah, so a couple people were asking about the ceasefire and the increase of bombing by Israel today. I said that I posted about it earlier today, just briefly mentioning it. The latest update that I had was Israel violated the ceasefire 47 times since it started in phase
Mhm.
one. And then basically, essentially today, the news that I saw was Hamas essentially returned fire. And that was Israel claiming that Hamas broke the ceasefire, which then instigated Israel to continue bombing Gaza. I saw a couple videos of that. They were bombing them pretty heavily today.
Yeah, no, I also saw that, and I've seen reports that said as high as 80 violations so far from Israel too, and I can't speak to that. I'm not there. Um,
Either
it's
way, 47 or 80, it doesn't 47, man, on
mm,
the conservative end, 47 times.
it's insane how and it's like the mantra people say every accusation is a confession, and that's the it seems like the case with them over and over and over. They accuse what they're confessing to. And yes, I guess you can say that the Palestinian side broke the ceasefire now, but it's only in retaliation against Israel bombing them and killing them. Lots of people there already since the ceasefire was put in place.
Yeah, it's the same story repeated. It's the same thing. Israel attacks them. Israel continues to attack them, and they get to a point where they had enough, and they return fire, and then Israel goes and cries like a little baby and says, "Oh, look, they attacked us."
Mhm. I had an interesting question come up on my Instagram just now. What does confession and repentance look like for the Orthodox Christians?
Yeah, so confession and repentance. So this is a sacrament in the Orthodox Church. Now, I will say, I don't know everything about Orthodoxy. Like I said, I came to
Mhm.
it this year, but I'll explain to you my understanding of confession and repentance. Repentance is should be a daily practice. As an Orthodox Christian, you should be, a lot of devout Orthodox Christians will pray minimum 7 times a day. We kind of have a prayer schedule that we go by. Um, but we do practice daily repentance at the end of every day. And then also we do repentance or confession with a priest. And this is a biblical thing that we see. It's also something that was passed down by the apostles. There's a verse that says to the apostles that they were basically given the authority to bind or to loose one's sins or their repentance. So in the early church, in the very early church, first century, second century, third century, Christians would do public confessions of their sins in front of the entire congregation. So these would be like smaller churches in the catacombs or the caves when Christians were getting persecuted, but they would do public confession where they would get up there and they would confess all of their sins for that day or that week or that month or whatever the case was in front of the whole congregation. We're called to confess our sins to other believers, right? And the apostles practiced that by having, and the church fathers as well, had that practice and that tradition where people would come and confess their sins to the leader of the church, the priest of the church, or the apostle, or whatever. Um, and so it's shifted kind of, it's different today because we don't do a public confession in front of the whole congregation. What we will do is we will go to the priest and we will do a confession before the priest, and he will kind of guide us through our process of repentance and getting that out, like flushing it out. That is
Mhm.
seen as essentially cleansing the soul. And the way we see it is the priest is the physician, the church is the hospital, and Christ is the healer. So we go and we're cleansing ourselves. We're sick with sin. We are stained with sin. When we body it up and keep it inside of us, it can make us actually physically ill if you're living in certain sins. So by going to confession, you're cleansing yourself and you're healing yourself. And the priest is kind of the physician walking you through that and guiding you through that process. So we practice it. Usually it's encouraged to do it, a couple times a month. Some people will do
Mhm.
it weekly. Some people will do it like every Sunday before liturgy because you want to get it out of you. You want to confess your sins and have true repentance before you partake in the body and blood of Christ, as we're
Mhm.
called to not partake in the body and blood in an unworthy manner. So some devout Orthodox will do it weekly. Some will do it yearly before Pascha, which is Easter, or some will do it monthly. It just depends on your personal walk with Christ, but that's how we view it.
It's interesting. I feel like at a absolute bare minimum, and maybe this is just my own personal belief. I feel like I would be much more inclined to walk closer with Christ and avoid sin if I knew
Yep.
that I had to, speak it to my pastor or to my priest, or
Yeah.
it's like you don't want to have to speak it. I can't even imagine. I go to a relatively larger church, but I can't imagine, each Sunday having to get up and be like, all right, look, guys, this is what I did this week. Boom, 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 boom. And
Exactly.
and I think as you grow closer to Christ, what I see with my own sin is a lot of my own sin. I feel like as I've gotten closer is it's not necessarily pre thought out sin, or like I'm going to do this. It's just I'm a human. I slip up and I say something I shouldn't have, or things like that. But even at that, it would be embarrassing in a lot of sense to have to confess, to know if I screw up, I need to speak on that. That's always been something that's interesting to me, is that idea of it. And I'm curious about seeing it. Some people, I think, within the Protestant church, you see kind of a similar function without the officialness of it, where
Yeah.
you have small groups and such. With like-minded men who are growing closer to Christ, we study the Bible together, and we it's accountability where we may speak about our sins or ask for help in a certain sin or whatever it may be. And I think that's important for any believer in some capacity, whether you're Catholic or you're Orthodox or you're Protestant, is to find a way to confess and to grow stronger with others around you.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to be said about keeping skeletons in the closet and letting those habitual sins fester, because also a part of confession is discipleship. If you're suffering with a particular habitual sin over and over and over, if you're going to confession every time and you're confessing, the same sin, the same thing, you're in habitual sin, you can receive discipleship on how to defeat that sin, how to overcome that sin, instead of letting it fester inside of you and eat you from the inside out. And I've seen that happen to a lot of people. I've seen, sexual immorality or stuff like that that destroys families, and people just keep it inside and they don't talk about it. They don't share
Mhm.
it with their Christian brothers. They don't let it out. They just let that skeleton stay in the closet, and eventually. When you let your sin live in darkness, that's where it can fester. That's where it can grow. But when you shed
Mhm.
light on it, you're shedding light on that and you're taking power away from the devil. So by going to confession and confessing your sins to the priest, he can also walk you through a process of discipleship to help you with particular, habitual sins or whatever it may be.
And one thing I can say with sexual sin to all of our viewers and mine, is cut that out as quickly as you can, because from my own experiences and from my experiences talking to other people, it will overtake you quicker than anything will. And you constantly will crave more. It's worse than any drug addiction, people will say, and how it reacts in your brain. Cut that out quickly. The sexual immorality and such. Don't let it destroy you. Don't let it destroy your marriages. And that keeping it in the closet is how we see, people like pastors, fall to this, because they keep it in the closet and they're embarrassed of it, and there, like you said, it festers and it grows, and they end up diving into somewhere where maybe as soon as 2 years before they would have said, "Oh, I would never." Oh my! And then they're cheating on their wife, or they're doing this, and everything blows up in their face. Um, cut the sin out, just like the scriptures say. If my right arm causes me to sin, I'm gonna cut it off. Let me get it out, because I want to grow
Mhm.
closer to Christ. Similar to that idea, I believe it was called theosis. Was that the correct term?
Theosis, yeah, theosis.
I'm assuming that would kind of work within that idea of trying to go closer to God, is cutting out the sin from your life in that manner.
Yeah, and in the Orthodox Church, we have a spiritual father who's is going to get to know you personally on a more personal level, and usually that's a priest, and you would go to your priest and you would confess these sins, and um, kind of cultivate a relationship with them, and they understand where you're coming from and like what you struggle with. The whole concept of, like, one of the main ideas of the church, of the Orthodox Church, is constant repentance and being connected to the vine constantly as best as you possibly can be. And so the priest is there as a spiritual father to guide you, and when you stumble, to bring you back. And so when you go to confession, you can pour out what you've done. You can
Mhm.
pour out what you're struggling with, and they can help you. Also, like, again, the liturgy revolves around the Eucharist, partaking in the body and blood of Christ. It happens every Sunday, and that's what it revolves around. That's like the last thing that we do. And so, as we're told not to partake in the Eucharist in an unworthy manner, you should be going to confession and pouring this out. And you also can't be staying, absent from communion, from the Lord's Supper. Christ told us that this is a commandment that we have to do. Truly, truly, I tell you, whoever eats the body and drinks the blood of the Son of Man has life in them. Whoever does not has no life in them. So
Mhm.
this is a commandment that Christ told us that we have to do. But again, we can't do it in an unworthy manner. So we
Yeah.
have to constantly. It's like this cycle of, you have to be living in the faith, or you can't partake in this sacrament that Christ told us we have to do.
Mhm.
So it's a constant, like, loop. I love it because it's a constant loop of just keeping you so connected to the vine.
Mhm. No, absolutely. And a lot of people that I'll talk to will say, "Well, I feel like I cannot hear God's voice in my life." And my first thought, and you don't want to just completely trash on them or anything, but it's like, have you tried cutting off the sin in your life and truly growing closer to God? because I'm a big believer that sin separates us from God, and the more sin that we have in
100%.
our life, yeah, I mean, it pulls us away from God to where you're probably not going to hear His voice nearly as often, if at all. If you want to hear God's voice and see His guidance and see His provision in your life, grow closer to Him, cut off the sin, and truly chase after Him daily. And that's one of my. I spoke on lukewarm Christians earlier. It breaks my heart to see these people. They claim to be these devout Christians, and I'm like, oh, when's the last time you opened your Bible? I'm one to read at least once daily, and I want to be in the Word and learning and gaining wisdom and growing closer to Christ and letting Him speak to me. And a lot of people they don't open their Bibles, and it's like that's God's Word for you. That's where we should be studying. We should be in prayer. We should be reading and learning and worshiping all in one. And a lot of Christians just don't, sadly.
Yeah, and I got to get going here soon, but I'll
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
I'll leave on this note. I get a lot of questions. If anybody's still in here who's curious about it, I get a lot of DMs, a lot of questions all the time from Protestants, especially, and Catholics and agnostics, atheists, even Muslims, asking me questions about the Orthodox Church, and I can't reply to every DM. I can't answer every single solitary question that you have. What I would encourage people to do, even if you're not that interested in it, it can't hurt to give it a look. you know Come and see is what we say. So when we talk about the church, we just say, come and see for yourself. So I would encourage people that have any interest, just go find a local Orthodox church, go to a liturgy. It's going to be weird, it's going to be foreign to you if you've never been to one, because it's an ancient ceremony. It's like you're walking back into the second century, because the Orthodox church sticks to the traditions, and the traditions the church has passed down for over 2,000 years. So you're going to go in, you might be a little averse to it. You might be a little apprehensive to some of the theology and some of the traditions. I was that way when I first went, coming from a Protestant background, but give it time. Go to the liturgy, absorb it, be present there, try to keep up with what's going on, and then afterwards ask questions. Go talk to the priest if you can, go talk to the congregation, ask questions about what just happened and what the church is all about. And as I went through this journey, as I started, like, I was very apprehensive to a lot of things, right? Like praying to Mary, the saints, confession, all of these things. Like, there was many things, icons. Like, I was very apprehensive at first to a lot of these things, but the deeper you go down the rabbit hole, that we like to say, the deeper you go, the more you realize that this is just how the church has been for 2,000 years. You can date back some of, these traditions to the first century, to the second century, to the third century. And these have been practiced for, 2,000 years. So if it's weird to you and new to you, I can tell you it's not weird and it's not new to the church. It's been around for a long time. It's been around since, the time of the apostles, or the church fathers. So keep that in mind when things are very foreign and very weird to you. You might think that some of these things are like heretical, even, but give it time, look into it, go to a liturgy, ask questions, and you're going to be apprehensive to some things at first, but give it an honest look. And I think most people will find it to be very beautiful. Even if you don't convert, you can pull something away from Orthodox Christianity, whether it be how you pray, how you study the word, how you pull something like, oh, I need to be confessing to my brother. Even if I don't have a priest, I should go and find a good brother in Christ to confess to on a weekly, monthly basis. You'll pull something good. I promise you will.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think whenever you are in any church like that, especially one of such admiration for God, I think you'll get something, and it's good to learn. I mean, whether or not you actually convert, like you said, I think that we can
Yeah.
all gain something from growing closer together as a group of Christians. But Clyde, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I know you've got to head out. I know we've been going for a couple hours. For those of my followers who maybe this is your first time listening to or experiencing Clyde, definitely give him a follow on Instagram at underscore the Real Clyde underscore. He's got a great account. He's got a great following. He's got obviously a great testimony that he spoke on tonight. Definitely give him your support. I mean, this is somebody who's really battling for the right causes, and that's somebody I appreciate him coming on and speaking, because he's one of the major. I would consider him like one of the generals in this war that we're fighting right now, this social media war. And he is a Marine too, so it works out. He's got both sides of it. But to everyone else that's here, I appreciate y'all coming on. I appreciate your support. I'm sure Clyde does too. For those of you watching after the fact, we appreciate y'all as well. That's going to be a wrap tonight. Clyde, like I said, again, thank you, man, and y'all, everybody have a good night.
Yeah. Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me on.